What is up, party people? Welcome or welcome back to my channel. I'm Jamila. This is Jamila Be Readin', because I do be readin'. Listen, there's some maintenance or something happening outside right now at my apartment complex. I don't know when it's gonna be done. This is the only time I can film right now, so I apologize if you can hear that in the background. Hopefully not. I've been staring and waiting for them to be over for a little bit now, and it doesn't seem like they're gonna be finishing up anytime soon. So here we are. Hopefully my mic is not picking this up. Hopefully I'm loud enough.
Should I start yelling, perhaps?
But anyways, today we are going to be doing my February wrap-up. It's been a minute since I posted a wrap-up video. I've been having technical difficulties literally when I did my December wrap-up and my January wrap-up, and I really hope that my camera is in focus. You probably heard the same sentiment in my baking while talking about my Medieval-a-thon books. And that ended up actually being a little bit out of focus, and I'm hoping that's not the case right now. I don't know what's going on with my camera, but anyways, hello. It's been a minute since I stood and filmed here and just talked about books, but February was a really not a good reading month for me. Honestly, the end of January up until really all of February, I've been kind of in a reading slump, kind of like in a life slump. I've been super busy with school. I had a moot court competition that I was preparing for with my teammates and a different team at my school, and I was doing a lot of stuff for Black History Month with my school as well. So it's just been really jam-packed and busy, and as a result, I didn't read that much, just because when I'm feeling busy up here, I don't really want to read. I just kind of want to mindlessly watch TV. So in that respect, I have a lot of things that I watched that I will be talking about later in this video, namely the fact that I rewatched the entire MCU in the month of February. But anyways, let's talk about the few books that I did read. So at the start of this month, I posted a Blackathon TBR. I had 4 books on there. I completed 2, and I started the 3rd one. So kind of a mixed bag there. Honestly, maybe I shouldn't have gone so jam-packed with all of the readathons at the beginning of the year, but I digress. Anyways, the first book that I ended up reading was The 100,000 Kingdoms by N.K. Jemisin. This is the first book in her Inheritance trilogy. I believe this was also her debut. I read this already back in 2018, so this was a reread for me, and I loved it still. No surprise there. I love N.K. Jemisin. She knows how to write, you know what I'm saying? This definitely has more of a fantasy feel. Compared to some of her other books, I feel like she kind of lends towards more science fiction in that regard. The City We Became and also the Broken Earth trilogy definitely feel more science fiction vibes than fantasy, but this one's definitely a lot more fantasy vibes. I also think this is a good entry point to N.K. Jemisin if you've been meaning to get into her works. I feel like the Broken Earth trilogy in particular is her most famous and most lauded series, but I also think it can be kind of intimidating. She does a lot of things in that series which make it excellent, but I also think maybe if you're new to N.K. Jemisin, or particularly you're new into fantasy, science fiction, Afrofuturism, that kind of genre, I think maybe this is a more easier entry point. But anyways, this is about Yennefer, who is an outcast from the barbarian north. Shortly after her mother dies, she ends up getting a note from her grandfather, who is the king of Sky and of this land that they're living in, telling her that she is going to be, requesting her presence. So she goes and finds out that she is named an heir, one of the heirs. And so she basically has to fight with the 2 other heirs, her cousins, to become the next leader of Sky. And they're gods. There's a lot going on. It's really good. I just think that N.K. Jemisin is so good with her character work and just building on all this mythology and all of it just came together really well. I did ultimately give this 4 stars. I'd say maybe 4.5 stars. It's about the same that I gave it when I first read it. This just didn't hit as much as the Broken Earth trilogy, just because that was my first entry point to N.K. Jemisin, but it's still really good. Also, I think N.K. Jemisin should write a fantasy romance. I just think that she would kill it. Obviously, she's really good at building her worlds and plot, but also, like, I feel like she could write a really good romance. Okay, let me just tell you. Let me just leave it at that. But yeah, loved it. Next up, I actually ended up rereading also The City We Became, also by N.K. Jemisin. This was the February pick for my local book club, and so I had to reread it. I did read this like May of last year, so it's like kind of almost been a year, closer to a year. And I'd forgotten a lot of stuff anyway, and this was a joy to reread. I swear I will never get any peace here. I've talked about this book plenty of times on this channel, but a quick recap of what this is about. This is basically a love letter to New York. So basically, cities have souls, and once they have reached the point where they have really developed their culture and their vibe and their people, they are born into... They're born. I can't tell you what they're born into, but they're born, and usually the city chooses an avatar, someone who's like the embodiment of the city, in order to help it, kind of like a midwife, go through the birthing process and make sure everything goes well, so that the city can be born. And you know, we have greats like Paris and London, Hong Kong, Sao Paulo. Okay, and so now it's New York's turn. But interestingly, there's actually 6 avatars. One that's the main New York avatar, but then we also have avatars that represent the different boroughs of New York. And so New York goes through the birthing process, but something is amiss. Something didn't go quite right. So now you have all these boroughs awakening. They're trying to come together to figure out what's going on, to defeat this sort of evil entity type of situation that's trying to prevent not only New York City from being born, but other cities as well. And so it's a great book, 5 stars. I love it. You already know this is one of my favorite books of last year. So next, Kindered by Octavia Butler. I actually ended up listening to the audiobook for this, for the whole book, which is really surprising for me because I'm not much of an audiobook person, but I really enjoyed the audiobook for this. I actually just finished this book last night, so technically I didn't finish it in February, but I'm going to count it, okay? I'm just going to count it. What can I say? This book was so good. I completely understand why this is a modern classic. It is excellent. This follows the story of Dana, who is a mid-20s black woman living in the 1970s, and she gets teleported back in time to the antebellum South. And so she's dealing with slavery and all of this stuff, and her time-traveling situation ends up being tied to this one person named Rufus in the antebellum South. So whenever he's in danger, Dana ends up getting sent back in time, and I won't really go into the mechanics of this because I don't want to spoil the story, but her time traveling is linked to this person, so she's basically trying to keep this person alive, and it's tough, obviously, because she's a black woman getting sent back to the antebellum South to a slave-holding family, so she's really going through it and like experiencing firsthand slavery and all that comes with it and all of this stuff, and it's just it was so good. I will say, like, the science fiction-y part of it is not the main part of the story. It's definitely more focused on, you know, being enslaved and meeting all of these people, and you know, the lengths that people will go to stay alive. There's like a lot of conversation between like what is a good black person and what's not a good black person. Dana is often called a white black person because she is close kind of to the slave-holding family. I won't get into like why that is, but there's just like a lot going on, and there's just all this conversation about Dana, like she's having to face this for the first time. Obviously she like knows obviously about slavery, but she's experiencing this firsthand, and she's just like, every time she goes back, she's just like, I feel like I'm losing a little bit of myself. I'm not fighting as much anymore, and I'm understanding, like, you know, how Black people, like, not accepted slavery, but had to accept it to survive, you know? It's just kind of like, that is how it is, and it was really sad, and she was kind of going through that too. Like, she just was, like, kind of slowly losing her spark and her fight, you know? And so, anyway, this was a really good book. I highly recommend it. I am one step closer now to making my way through Octavia Butler's work. Anyway, so good. I also highly recommend the audiobook. I thought it was a very immersive experience. Alright, and finally, as far as books go, I started Rosewater by Tade Thompson. I didn't finish it. As you can see, I'm like not even halfway through. This is something that's going to be carried on into March. And yeah, it's a first contact with aliens type of story. This is a really interesting story. I will say it's like a little bit more slow paced than I maybe would have liked, but I'm enjoying it so far. I think I'm trying to I'm waiting for the audiobook, because I might have this be the audiobook that I read or listen to for this month, just because, you know, I'm finding that I'm liking audiobooks a little bit more. But anyway, there's that. And then as far as manga goes, because of course I did read some manga this month, I read the first volume of Chainsaw Man, which is by the same author as Fire Punch, and you all know that I read, maybe you don't, I don't know if this was in December, but anyways, I read the first volume of Fire Punch, and I had very mixed feelings about that, and I also, again, have very mixed feelings about this first volume of Chainsaw Man. I think I like this a little bit more, and I think I may continue, but I think I might just read it on the Shonen Jump app, because I don't really care to go get it from the library. So I'll just read it on my phone if I choose to continue, but it's interesting. It's like, I read this at the beginning of February, so I don't really remember much, but there's this kid, there are monsters in this world, and they have to fight them, and he's like a monster fighter or something like that, but then he ends up almost dying, and then his like monster dog companion goes into him, and he becomes the Chainsaw Man. I don't know. It was kind of a weird setup. I don't know that I like it that much. I just, it's interesting. I think there's it's like one of those situations where it's like, either this is gonna be like, there was no point to any of this, or it's gonna like really be deep and meaningful. So I think I might continue with that, but we'll see. I guess I'll kind of talk about the stuff that I watch, because this ties into the manga. So I ended up deciding to watch the anime Maid-sama. It was on New York, and it just kept being advertised towards me, and I was like, whatever, I kind of want like a shoujo to watch right now anyway. So I watched all 26 episodes of it, and then I continued on with the manga, and I ended up reading the next 10 volumes or however many to the finish of it. And I did that all in like basically one weekend. It was kind of just like a lot of Maid-sama all at once, and it was fine. If I had to give it a rating, I'd maybe give it like 3 stars. It definitely suffers from the like mid 2000s to early 2010s like shoujo vibe, you know. It's like definitely a product of its time period, you know what I'm saying? There was definitely some problematic stuff in this, like a lot, that kind of pushed me over the edge a little bit. It seemed like the author was trying to maybe touch on like gender identity, but it was just not handled very well. It was weird. I don't know. I didn't really like it. And there was just a lot of like excusing of like non-consensual things that were happening as well. The basic premise of this is that our main character, Misaki, is the school president or whatever at her high school. This high school has recently started integrating women, because it used to be an all-boys school, and now there's like a small handful of women that go there. Misaki rules with an iron fist. She's had to work very hard to get to where she is, because all of these boys are rowdy and whatever, and they don't want to listen to a woman, right? But her secret is that she works at like a maid cafe, And so she's like hiding this. She doesn't want anyone to know because they won't respect her anymore. Not that they really do respect her anyway. They call her like the devil president or something like that. So one day the like really popular dude ends up seeing her there. He keeps her secret, but then he keeps showing up. All of this stuff, whatever. It's just like kind of slice of life. There's not really like a main plot that goes on here. There's a lot of weird stuff going on. I don't know. It was like kind of a mix of like Oran and Special A. I don't know, like I said, it just felt like a lot of the same type of like shoujo manga that like came out around that same time. There was a lot of like the same tropes that were used, like poor girl, and of course the dude's like super rich and she has to like go to a whole nother country to like save him from his rich family. It was ridiculous. Like, it was mindless fun, but there was definitely more problematic things that bothered me than say like Oran or Special A. So there's that to keep in mind. I wouldn't necessarily recommend it, but it's whatever. Okay, so moving on completely now to shows, because that was all I read for February. Like I said, it was a bad reading month for me. But anyway, I watched a lot of things. Like I said, I watched Maid-sama before reading the rest of the manga. And like I also mentioned as well, I rewatched basically the entire MCU. I didn't get to Spider-Man Far From Home. I'm kind of waiting just because I know the third one is supposed to come out later this year. So I think I might watch that closer to when that comes out. Yeah, I rewatched the entire MCU. I don't really know what to say about that, except that I watched 22 movies basically within the span of like 2-ish weeks. I don't know what came over me, honestly. I think, okay, well, let me say this. I'm also watching Wanda Vision, which is just chef's kiss. Honestly, the day I'm filming this, Thursday, tomorrow is the finale, and I just don't know what to expect, okay? This past episode was so good. I was crying. Vision came in with the hot line. Oh my god. Okay, but anyway, I'll talk about WandaVision in a little bit, but I've been watching that, and I think that just kind of like reinvigorated my interest in the MCU and all of that, so I just rewatched it all. I don't really know what else to say about that personally, except that Thor Ragnarok is one of the best films in the entire MCU. That and Black Panther are really like my top 2 favorites. But anyways, WandaVision. I did not care about Wanda or Vision really prior to this show. I was just like, okay, they're here. I don't really care about any of these characters. I'm not like a comic book reader, so it's not like I had all of this info and loved them prior to the MCU. I also didn't buy their romance. I feel like that kind of came out of nowhere, and then the movie was really trying to push us towards this romantic situation. You know, obviously, like, I was sad when Vision died and Wanda had to kill him, and then he got brought back. I'm sorry if I'm ruining Endgame or Infinity War for you, but whatever. So I was like, I'm gonna watch WandaVision, but I didn't have any like high expectations because I didn't know what to expect. They weren't my favorite characters from the MCU. I didn't really know much about their story from the comics, so I was just like, okay, let me see what's going on. And I was so pleasantly surprised to find that it was so good. I really loved that. I don't know, like, I'm guessing now that Marvel and the MCU is like really established in pop culture, they can start taking interesting routes and not following the same formulaic method that they've been employing in a lot of their movies. So, you know, this whole idea of like having this sitcom and it's moving forward each decade until it like culminates, and there's like this background mystery like going on, and all of this stuff was just so good and well crafted. I just loved it, even from the get-go. I know a lot of people were like, the first 2 episodes were kind of slow, you need to get... I liked it from the beginning. I was like, this is really interesting. I like that they're going a very different route here, and and like I said, this last episode 8, where we're getting like Wanda's backstory and how we got to this point, and just all the emotion, all the acting is really good. Sorry, I'm like gushing now. Anyways, let's move on from Marvel. Okay, so I have mentioned this, I think, on this channel, that I watched this show called The Outpost, which is on CW, and it's on the Sci-Fi Network or channel. outside of the US. But it is this low budget, really low budget fantasy show. I'm not going to go into the premise of it, honestly, but I was just watching season 3 with my friend. We were watching it earlier this month, and it was, you know, the show is not good. Let me just say that. The show is not good, but something about it has just kept the both of us in there, and we're in it now. You know what I'm saying? There are parts where it's like really good, but most of it's really bad. And a lot of the like good consistent actors have been in and out of the show, so that's kind of sad. We originally came into this show because we watched I think it's the same company that does The Outpost, but they have this movie series called Mythica. You can watch it on Amazon Prime, and it's like, again, low budget production fantasy movies, but we like love those. Again, they're not like the best, but we love them, and one of our favorite actors from there ended up getting like a main cast role in this show, so we basically just followed him from that movie to this show, and we've just stayed with it. And actually, the actress who is going to be playing Inej in the Shadow and Bone series, she had a significant role in the second season of The Outpost. That's how I knew her before, and I was just like, holy shit, like, she got a good gig. She was like honestly one of the better actresses on the show. I was really sad that she wasn't made like a series regular, but honestly, good for her, because now she's on Shadow and Bone. She's playing my girl Inej. Like, she looks fire in all of those shots. But yeah, we watched the third season. It was not great. It ended in a very wild situation. Honestly, if you are watching this and you happen to be involved with this show, please hit me up, because I have suggestions. I can make this show fire for y'all. Let me just tell you that. Hit me up. Then I finally caught up with Attack on Titan. I watched all of season 3 this month, basically. And then caught up with season 4. I'm like 2 episodes behind again, because I don't know, I'm personally not really feeling this season that much. I know a lot of people are like hyping this up. It's the final season, but I don't know. I don't know that I like where this story went personally, but I'm gonna continue it. Obviously, I already did all this work, so there's that. And then I started watching New Girl. I've never seen it before, but I'm feeling FOMO now because everyone talks about this show. Everyone loves it. So as of right now, I'm still in the first season. I think I'm almost done with the first season, and it definitely, again, product of its time. Some stuff that like probably wouldn't fly if it was coming out right now, but overall, I think it's really hilarious. I really like this like found family friendship dynamic between all of them. And I'm just sitting here waiting for Jess and Nick to get together. I mean, it's very obvious that they're going to get together, so I'm just waiting, you know? I also watched To All the Boys I've Loved Before, Always and Forever, Laura Jean, the third one, whatever it's called. Watched that, and I thought it was a fine conclusion. Again, I feel the same about all of the movies. I'm not going to read the books, so don't ask me about that at any point. But I enjoyed the movies enough. They're fine. They're not the best, but they're fine. They're entertaining. It's cute, you know. I'm jealous of Laura Jean's baking equipment in her kitchen. I would also like that. But anyways, that is all the things. All of the things that I consumed in the month of February. Here's hoping that March is a better reading month for me. I will catch y'all in the next video.